The movie begins as we're introduced to a man named Ben Matthias. He is an astrophysicist who has recently developed a camera for a spectral photography experiment that is supposed to capture the ghost particle. One evening at a New Year's party, he meets a woman named Alyssa, who is a ghost tour guide. Although their jobs are very different, they find common ground as Alyssa believes they are both looking for the unseen. They quickly feel drawn to each other and form a relationship. Eventually, they get married, but their happiness is short-lived as Alyssa meets a tragic end in a car accident. The scene shifts to many years later, and we see that Ben is still mourning the loss of his late wife and has become an alcoholic. He has abandoned his scientific pursuits and has taken Alyssa's job as a ghost tour guide. However, it turns out that he himself doesn't believe in ghosts and is often rude to his visitors. In the next scene, we see a woman named Gabby and her son Travis who has arrived from New York to relocate to a mansion named Gracie Manor, hoping to turn it into a bed and breakfast. Seeing their new home, Gabby is overjoyed, while Travis notices several ghosts and shadows lurking around. He tells his mother about it, but she doesn't believe him until a suit of armor appears behind them, causing them to run away in panic. Just then, a ghost in a hatbox starts laughing and says that they'll have to return. A few days later, Ben is sleeping in his home when he's visited by a priest named Kent. He refuses to let him in, so Kent breaks the door lock and enters inside. Ben demands he leave, but Kent asks him to go to a haunted mansion and shoot images for the sake of the new owner, who is afraid. Ben thinks a haunted mansion is absurd, but when offered a large sum of money, he agrees. Later, while going through his camera, he learns that the battery has died, but he's not bothered because, according to him, ghosts do not exist. Sometime later, Ben arrives at the Gracie Manor where he meets Gabby and Travis. Before he enters, Gabby warns him that if he wants to, he can still leave because he won't be able to do that once he's inside. However, Ben isn't scared and enters the mansion without hesitation. Gabby tells him that she and Travis are currently camping in the hall area because they're afraid to go anywhere else. She shows Ben all the rooms where ghosts could be, but he just pretends to shoot photos since he believes it's a big joke. Later, he assures Gabby and Travis that it's just their brains playing tricks on them and leaves the mansion. Afterward, at his apartment, Ben begins to notice strange events, such as wet footprints and the remote being pushed from his grasp. He dismisses it and goes to bed, but soon starts to hear weird noises coming out of his bathroom. When he opens it, he finds an entire ocean within, as well as a boat and a spear aimed at him. He goes to clear his mind, but a ghost starts following him around. When he returns, his apartment is full of water, which pushes him into the street. The ghost again appears and orders Ben to return to the mansion. Having no other option, Ben returns to the mansion, where Gabby and Travis are expecting his arrival. It becomes clear that once someone enters the mansion, the ghost will not let them leave. Ben scolds Gabby for not informing him earlier, but she points out that he also took a lot of money merely to pretend to take pictures. Ben agrees, and he's surprised when Kent appears, revealing that he is also trapped in his house. After this, Ben shows the group a photograph he took with his camera in which they see a ghost of a sea captain. Kent calms everyone down and advises that they should fight the ghost together. As midnight approaches, they all gather in the living room, but Ben is determined to figure out why the ghosts want them there. Moments later, he is pursued by an evil ghost who declares he will gladly take Ben's soul. As a result, Ben becomes terrified for the first time in his life and flees to the main hall, where the others console him. The following morning, Ben and Kent leave the mansion to meet with a professor named Bruce Davis, who knows a lot about the history of Grace Manor. He reveals that the estate was originally owned by William Gracie, who purchased it from an unknown owner, and that his wife, Eleanor, tragically died of yellow fever. He reveals that things began getting weird after Eleanor's death. It turns out that Bruce has an archive containing information about the mansion, but he's only willing to share it if he's allowed to join them. However, Ben and Kent do not want him to be trapped in the haunted mansion, so they steal the file and run away. Following this, Ben and Kent go to meet a medium named Harriet and bring her to the mansion. Ben thinks she's a fraud, but Kent believes she has a gift. She shares her opinion on the hauntings and claims to have detected a grieving ghost in the room. After some exploring, she leaves the place, requesting them to send money to her account. But as expected, she returns 2 hours later because the ghosts continue to follow her. That evening, the group read through the archives and discover that, since William's death, around 60 people had died in a specific manner inside the mansion. After studying the blueprints of the mansion, they discover a hidden seance chamber. There, Harriet begins a seance with the rest of the group. They try to evoke William's ghost, but all he does is grab a pen and paper and write, "Talk to Leota." Harriet then tries to summon Leota, but the Hatbox ghost prevents them from doing so and disrupts the seance. It seems like the Hatbox ghost does not want the mystery to be solved. After this, the evil ghost drags Harriet out of the mansion. The others try to help her, but they see Bruce arrive at the mansion, who ends up getting hurt when the ghost drags him outdoors. He is hospitalized, but Ben and Gabby bring him back when the sea captain's ghost causes chaos at the hospital. Later, after everyone falls asleep, Ben suddenly awakens and notices a reflection of Alyssa. He becomes emotional and rushes to talk to her. Outside, he is plagued by several ghosts that invite him to join them in their world. As he runs away from them, he is awakened by his group, and it turns out to be just a nightmare. The group informs him that Bruce is missing, and they immediately begin searching for him. Soon after, they come across Bruce, who advises that they should look in the attic for Leota. So, Ben climbs up the attic and discovers an antique chest. But suddenly, a ghost bride shows up with an axe and starts attacking him. Fortunately, he manages to escape and takes the chest with him. After this, the group opens the chest, which contains a large crystal and a heavy book. Turns out that the Hatbox ghost had captured Leota in the crystal ball, and she had been there for a long time. She then begins telling the story of William Gracie in exchange for $3. She explains that after his wife Eleanor's death, William was overwhelmed with grief. So he contacted Leota, who was a medium, to communicate with his wife. However, despite their multiple efforts to reach Eleanor, she never responded. By opening a portal to the region beyond, hundreds of spirits entered the mortal world and settled in Gracie Manor. William believed he had finally connected with his wife's spirit when he began receiving messages from her. She urged him to join her on the other side, but Leota suspected it wasn't Eleanor, but the evil Hatbox ghost. After suffering deeply, William eventually gave up on his life to be with Eleanor. Leota explains that the powerful Hatbox ghost targets grieving people. She says that the ghost has now confined 999 souls and is looking for the last one to complete his ritual. A curse seemed to have trapped him in the mansion, and if the ritual is successful, he will be able to exit the mansion. This explains why the ghost wants humans to remain in the mansion. Hearing this, Harriet concludes that they need a banishment, which requires them to find an object that the ghost once held. Since they still don't know who the evil spirit is, Harriet suggests they try a reverse seance, also known as astral projection. So, the following morning, Ben decides to go into the ghost world. Upon getting there, he meets William, who is still looking for Eleanor, and he admits that he's responsible for the mansion's state. Although William doesn't know who the Hatbox ghost is, he says this evil ghost has remarkable powers that it uses to force other ghosts into carrying out his commands. Just then, the Hatbox ghost appears, terrifying all the other ghosts and causing them to run away. He notices Ben and tries to lure him by claiming he can fulfill his desire to see Alyssa again. Sensing the danger, Ben flees back to the mortal realm. Since he has now seen the ghost, Bruce advises him to consult with a sketch artist to give the ghost a face. After seeing the sketch, they ultimately identify the Hatbox ghost as a man named Alistair Crump. They find out that Alistair Crump was abused as a child by his father. rumors circulated that he was kicked out of his home because his father thought he was too emotional at his mother's funeral. His father expected him to act tough, and after being banished, Crump suddenly disappeared. However, he reappeared after his father's mysterious death and became a wealthy business magnate who hosted lavish gatherings at Crump Manor. Strangely, some of his party guests went missing without a trace. It was believed that he engaged in sinister blood rituals to maintain his wealth and influence. After years of observing his murderous deeds, some of his staff eventually united and beheaded him. Although he met his end in the mortal world, he remains a feared presence even among the ghosts. The group finds out that Crump Manor has now been designated a historical landmark and transformed into a bed and breakfast. So they hope that they can find an artifact belonging to Crump that could banish him. As they devise their plan, Crump eavesdrops on them, and he makes the house swallow them to keep them from leaving. Fortunately, Ben and Travis manage to get away and find Kent outdoors. The three then make their way to Crump Manor. Visitors inform them that Crump's head is rumored to be within the mansion because only his body was found after the murder. Guided by the sea captain spirit, they locate an underground passage where Crump had buried his victims, and there they discover his skull and hat. After this, Ben and Kent make their way back to Gracie Manor, asking Travis to remain in the car for his safety. Inside the mansion, Bruce greets Kent and Ben, saying that the war has been over after Harriet performed a spell. However, it becomes clear that Bruce is possessed as he tries to deceive Ben and Kent into drinking poison. Ben soon discovers that Harriet and Gabby have been tied up. He releases them, and Harriet begins the banishment ritual. However, Crump's ghost is very strong, and he quickly throws his hat into the flames. He tells the group that he needs one willing soul for his plan to work, and he had initially chosen Ben. However, since Ben would not willingly commit his life to him, he has now picked Travis. Meanwhile, outside in the car, Travis is approached by the voice of his late father, who died a year ago. This makes him emotional as he remains unaware that it is not his father, but Crump. Soon, Crump entices Travis into a hidden passage, and the group splits into smaller teams. Gabby and Ben look for Travis, while Harriet tries to get hold of Leota, and Kent and Bruce strive to get the hat from the fireplace. Leota advises teaming with Harriet to defeat the evil spirit, which will require the use of a powerful spell to free her from the crystal ball. Meanwhile, Ben finally finds Travis, who is convinced that his father has come to see him. Ben understands Travis's situation, and he comforts him by sharing his grief. Eventually, Travis trusts Ben and chooses him over the evil spirit in the shape of his father. However, Crump refuses to give up and offers Ben a deal. In exchange for Gabby and Travis's lives, he wants Ben to sacrifice himself willingly. Meanwhile, Bruce gets a piece of the hat, and Kent persuades the Ghost Army to fight against their oppressor, Crump. Crump corners the others in the graveyard with his Ghost Army until Ben volunteers to be the final soul. He promises Ben that he can see Alyssa again, and Ben decides to give up his life. Just then, Bruce arrives with the remaining piece of the hat and gives it to Leota and Harriet. They start banishing Crump back to his grave and the underworld. Crump begs Ben not to let it happen so that Alyssa will know he truly loves her. But Ben assures him that she already knows and kicks Crump in the face, sending him back to hell. Following Crump's defeat, the other ghosts decide not to move on or disappear. Instead, they go back to the mansion in higher spirits since Crump no longer rules over them. Meanwhile, Leota decides to return to the crystal ball, claiming that it isn't so bad. After seeing the ghosts dancing throughout the halls, Gabby and Travis choose to stay and take care of them. A few days later, Ben and Travis help with fulfilling the sea captain ghost's ultimate wish of being returned to the sea, where he quickly steals a boat. Following that, Ben is shown giving Kent Alyssa's belongings and deciding to move on. However, before he leaves, he notices a cat tagged Tater Tot sitting on the porch. He thinks it's a sign from Melissa because tater tots used to be her favorite snack. The movie concludes with everyone reuniting at the mansion for a Halloween celebration, with the ghosts singing and dancing together.